Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development. Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
Well, hey, Beastmode, happy podcast day.
Happy podcast day indeed. My favorite day of the week.
Mine too. Although Thanksgiving is coming up, and I must say that is, Thanksgiving might be a little bit more exciting, but on your typical week, this is a highlight for sure.
Definitely. I couldn't think of a better place to be than right here with you, my man.
Awesome. Appreciate it. I don't have any pecan pie for you, though. I just have, but I will dish up some content for you. So, hey, man, I listened to the, let's just talk here and just kind of keep it real. I listened to to last week when I was working out just before the podcast, and it was pretty awesome. I really encourage people to go check it out. I feel like the podcast has a real rhythm to it. It's super business, super practical. We don't cover science and engineering. We tend to cover sales, marketing, social, branding, and content and things and business development, things of that nature. But so if that's kind of what you're into, then you're at the right place.
Yeah.
But last week was about content. The whole series that we're in right now is stretching for growth, and we thought we'd talk a little bit about and kind of just bat it back and forth. The idea of research in developing your content, hyper tailoring. So that's kind of how you develop content for a specific customer and deliver it. And then also storytelling, which Beastmode is really good at that, actually. And his brand building is great about that. So it'll be a nice way to leverage our unique strengths tonight. But the first thing maybe I'll start off with is just around the general topic of research. So last week we talked about content, and we did touch on places to get research. So I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit more. The first thing to understand about research when you're developing your content is that you want to know who your market is, and you want to decide on a market, even if that's on an experimental basis. So if Beastmode's organization, which helps people with branding and social and more, but if they love to work with contractors, then they might want to just pick two and just say, we're going to work with plumbers and painters or whatever it may be, instead of boiling the ocean. Now, the little thing that I'm working on the side, I have 9 verticals. It's probably too many, fair enough, and that's my personality. But it's like accounting and legal, small software companies, and so forth, in North Texas and Southern Oklahoma. That's kind of my region that I'm going after. So you want to define your market for sure. And once you define your market, what's great about that is that now you can sort of like downstream it. You can develop your message. So it's thoughts that I have about sort of like defining your market to help you start researching your message. So Beastmode, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, stop me if I'm going too far ahead. I know we've been kind of roundtabling this on the side, and so I don't want to step out far too ahead. But so when we research through social or branding and things like that, what we're doing is we're looking for what's working, what's currently working, what's currently out there that's happening, that's going on, and how can we take that and put our spin on it? Because a lot of times we don't, let's just, I'll give you an example. So right now, one of the biggest players in all of social media is PlayStation. I know we're older and I don't have the console or anything like that, but they do really good at what they're doing. And specifically on Twitter, they are phenomenal. I think they have the #1 followers and engagement out of everybody on Twitter, right? But you're not going to be able to copy what they do, but there's a style, there's a flavor that you can do. And so you can go piggyback and look and see what are customers engaging with. Just like you were saying, where instead of boiling the, what was your term?
Boiling the ocean.
Yeah. And so the amount of social media platforms that are out there that you can drop your content in, right? You don't need to go sign up for 15 different social medias and try to deliver content on all of them because they're all different. But what you do need to do is say, here's where my customers are. They're on this one. So if I don't have that one, I need to develop that one. And if I already have that one, then what content do my customers like here? And that's just kind of looking around.
Good. Yeah, it's important. And what I like about several things I like about what you said, when you're thinking about your market, though, one of the things that Beastmode said was, look at what works. I think that's a really good idea. So if you give yourself permission to fail and do little micro experiments and you figure out, yes, this particular avenue works, then you can keep that in your file and say, well, we'll do more of that, right? And I think that's a great thing. I think, the danger is that some of us don't do enough experimentation. And so therefore it's going to be hard to stretching for growth if you're not, experimenting with your message and with your approach. So that's a little bit about defining your market.
Sometimes,
yeah,
real quick, sometimes the stretching for growth in this aspect is doing the research. Some people, it's not the content, it's not that, it's the taking the moment, the time delay, the effort, the energy to go see what's working, go researching that. Sometimes that's the stretch because I just want it now. And so I'm just going to produce something and put it out there and we'll see what happens. Instead of doing that, stretch yourself to go say, how can I learn from somebody who's doing it well? And I don't need to copy them. And maybe you do take exactly what they're doing, but you just put your spin on it. That's stretching in itself.
That's
Sorry
great.
about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's good. Good roundtable. Let's keep it going. So research, using micro experiments, we've talked about that before. Great way to wash, rinse, and repeat the things that work and discard the things that don't work. So as you're researching to develop your market, now let's assume you've got some sense of your market direction. Now it's great because your message can easily be identified from that. One thing I want to give you guys some thoughts about is that you probably have, and I've talked about this in prior podcasts, but the audience can vary on these quite a bit. But you probably have some good data in your CRM system, or in your spreadsheets, or in your orders, or in your lead responses from the past. Think about all the customer response points that you have, whether that means they placed an order, they responded to a lead, they attended your webinar, they responded to an email, or any of the, and other, just think about all the different ways customers respond to you based on your effort, right? And take those and look for the common patterns of the things that worked. And out of those, you can drive some messaging that works, right? Because if you think about it, each one of those things that you attempted had a messaging aspect to it. You didn't just send out a blank email, okay? The email that worked, right, it has a certain message to it, or a social ad in Beastmode's case, or a webinar that you surprisingly you had 20 people sign up. You normally have 4 people sign up to your webinar. To give a small example, what was it about that message that resonated, and then really look across all of your internal data and say, these are the themes of people in my market. These are the themes of the things that people have issues with. And these are the problems that people want to solve. And so I love doing that. I've done that extensively in my last company. I spent weeks on this work actually. And I created some really nice proprietary data that we then use for sales, marketing, prospecting, discovery calls, all kinds of stuff. Maybe I'll show that someday. If you want a private sample of that, I'm willing to send that to people one-on-one. If you just in the YouTube comments, just hit us up there. And someday we'll have a show email address. We just haven't thought about that yet, but we probably should eventually. And then you can hit us up for content questions that way. But yeah, I think, look at your, so we talked a little bit about general market research and using experiments to identify what works and getting your messaging out of that. The other side is what I just talked about, which is getting your message out of your internal history and your internal data. So let's shift Beastmode into specific research about a particular target customer or a particular target customer segment or vertical. You know, what can we talk about that'll help them think about researching a particular type of customer, like accountants, or even to the level of a specific accounting firm?
Yeah, I think a specific accounting firm we're going to talk about in hyper tailoring.
Yeah, maybe
in
we'll
our
save
next
that.
point.
Yeah. We'll save that.
But when you're talking about a general field, again, so you're going to look at, and I'm going to talk about it from my perspective from social, just because it's the easiest for me. And so I'm going to go look and see what are these accounting firms? What are they responding to? Because they are going to respond. Or, maybe you're making your calls, and as you're cold calling, you're asking certain questions about your product or service, and you're finding out that everybody seems to be going back this direction or leaning this certain way. So then I'm going to go to my competitor. What are they doing? What are they doing that I'm not doing? Maybe it's a service. Most likely it's not. Most likely it's a message, how they're messaging and delivering their content for the same service that you're providing, but they're delivering it in such a way that people are responding to. So how are they getting it out there? Again, you're not copy pasting, but what you're doing is you're saying these end users are responding to this. So my lure needs to be similar so that I can start attracting these customers and start having some numbers.
So good. So good. So I think my take on researching a specific target customer vertical, let's just stick with accounting. I mean, I think what I would do is I'd pick one or two accounting firms, maybe a small and a mid-size, or maybe all three sizes, and I would spend, and it's like Beastmode said, I mean, he warned you guys on the last podcast, some of this work can take weeks. He even said 60 days. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think at least hours on one vertical. You should spend 2 business days reading everything about a vertical, and you should be able to understand the problems that vertical has. So let's just keep it to accounting firms, right? For example, you guys may not be aware of cybersecurity, but cybersecurity, if you think about an accounting firm and their needs around cybersecurity, they have a lot of customer data, and it's financial. It's the worst kind of data, like the riskiest kind of data, and they've got that on how many customers, right? So from a cybersecurity standpoint, there's the risk of being hacked. There's the risk of losing the data just because accidents happen, floods, fire, whatever, accidental deletion, right? Or didn't save correctly or whatever. Also from a compliance perspective, there's certain government rules when you're an accounting firm that you have to follow, or there may be, I haven't researched it yet, that are related to compliance, like PCI maybe, or I don't know, whatever they are. And so, yeah, I think what I would really do, and what I'm going to have to do for my side hustle, is actually that I'll have to read about accounting firms, and I'll probably be a hypocrite, and I won't spend really 2 business days, but I'll probably spend a business day. I probably will spend 8 hours. I probably will. In fact, just to give you an example, I have a job interview. This is actually relevant. I have a job interview tomorrow afternoon at 4 for something that is a head of sales for the Western region for a banking software company, right? And because I helped a company recently around banking software, I actually have a little bit of familiarity with that. But I'm going to spend I have a time budget of 6.5 hours at least to go study that as though I were them. And so with that, I'll be able to have an understanding of that vertical, the problems they're solving, and the problems they have as well. So that's an example, and I do it all the time in terms of when I'm researching a vertical. So any more comments on the general topic of digesting everything you can about a key customer type or a key customer segment or vertical? Any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be the officer's perspective, and so you can get lost in this information, and so we're not suggesting that. And actually, kind of my last comment, because I know we're going to have to move on to the next topic, is sometimes going back and looking at all the data that is there, whether you think it's there or not, is not feasible. Let's be real. But what you can do is be intentional today and say, all right, I'm changing my message tomorrow, and this is what I'm changing about it. I'm now taking my email and taking a whole paragraph out. Let's see if that's what gets a response. Okay, I'm going to change my social media, and I'm going to put 2 pictures instead of 1. Let's see if that gets a response. Or I'm going to change all my social medias to just videos. Let's see if that gets a response. But I'm intentional with what I did, and I document, this is what I changed. That way, if it's positive or negative, I can go directly to what I changed and say, this is positive or this is negative. If I'm willy-nilly and just say, I'm going to change just to change, but I'm not intentional, then if I start seeing results positively, what exactly did they like? I don't really know. I added a paragraph and I put a picture. You see what I'm saying? And so you got to be intentional. So if you can't go back, we hear you. We live in the real world, but be intentional with what you're doing starting today.
Yeah, that's good. And, some people don't have the historical data. So Beastmode is being very empathetic right now for you guys. Listen, you may not have set up your CRM with the types of custom fields, and you may not have had the discipline, or by the way, I don't mean discipline in a bad way, like you have no discipline. What I mean is it's a process. You may not have had the process to capture that. So don't use that as an excuse for how you can change it for the future. Because if you set up your CRM, there's always the ability to have a custom field. All you have to do is start tracking 3 or 4 or 5 fields, like vertical, employee size, revenue size, location. What were the key pains they were what were the key pains that they wanted to address, right? Maybe there's 2 or 3 of those per customer. So you're talking 5 or 6 fields that you fill out every time. And then in 6 months, you will thank us that you've got quite a bit of data to do stuff with and to learn from, right? So yeah, but I agree, they don't always have it right now. So moving on to hyper tailoring. So hyper tailoring is a very exciting. It's very hard though. It's time consuming, but it's a very exciting way of doing business, and it is a high empathy approach. And not empathy. When I say empathy, I used to think it meant being really sensitive and being just nice, and it's actually not. What empathy is you put yourself in their shoes, and it means that you can relate to them as though you were really there with them. You know what I mean? So hyper tailoring basically says that I am going to invest the time to understand your let's say you're my customer, your situation, your pain points, your goals, maybe your competition, your best customer profile, and I'm going to basically use all that really good research about you. Again, it's hyper tailoring, right? We talked about general messaging, and we talked about vertical development or target customer development, and we talked early on about your market and all that. Now we're talking about at an individual, let's say an accounting firm, right? One accounting firm, let's say it's in Dallas, and it's a mid-sized firm that has 250 employees, okay? And you're going to go read everything about their website. You're going to go read reviews on Glassdoor. You're going to go read the profiles of several of the people on LinkedIn that are key leaders. You're going to go look for blogs and read that. You're going to really understand, because you've already done, remember, you started off and you did the vertical research already about general accounting, right? So you have enough to be dangerous. Now you're talking to, Julie and Jim's accounting firm, and you want to really hyper tailor to get their attention and to do business development with them. So what we're suggesting is that you do enough research about them personally that when you're writing the email, you can speak with more authority and with more clarity and with more conviction and with more relevance, because you're talking about their business as though you're an insider. And that's one of my secrets in closing business in bigger transactions, is that we'll tell the story even in the voice of we. I'll get to the point when I sold to MasterCard, I was getting to the point that I was saying we like I'm on their team, right? And so that's an example of hyper. Yeah, so thank you. And I'm going to flip it to you actually, because you seem to have a little bit of a spark there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely for hyper tailoring, you're speaking as though you're sitting in the room with them. And again, you're identifying key pain points, you're identifying positives, you're praising successes. Again, this isn't all negative. You come in there with totally negative about this is everything you're missing and et cetera, it's going to be real quick, open and shut. But what you can do is, again, you're praising the positives, you're highlighting the negatives, you're showing that maybe, and then maybe again, you're showing here's how you're winning against your competitor, but here's also how you're losing against your competitor. And finally, this is how our product, our solution, our service can help you win against this specific outcome. And this is why, and you're delivering it. And guys, we can do this together. And you're in the room, you know, and then it's a full game. Now, again, this is not every single client. Do not approach every single client. You can get caught, just like you can get caught up in research and data, you can get caught up and try to approach every single client that's way. This isn't it. This is for key potential clients that are going to shake your business. You spend the time to do it right. And then you cold call everybody else. And you go from there. Specifically for social, if they do have social and they are engaging, I would find out what they're engaging with. And then whenever I'm delivering my message to them, I would deliver my message on social to them. And a lot of times, and I've done this for other brands before, is we've called out who they want to work with and literally threw a net out there and said, come view this, come see this, I'm talking to you. And it really works well.
It's good. You know, I think it's like a lot, you know, we encouraged you guys to try micro experiments, right? Why don't you take a customer, you know, a reasonable customer, you know, listen, it might be hard to sell to MasterCard right away. So you may not want to, as your experiment, you may not want to try MasterCard, you know, but you can if you want, but you know, that's a very complex, large organization that everybody wants to sell to. But why don't you pick an account or two and spend 2 hours each researching and writing and thinking. Part of this is sitting and thinking quietly. No one does that, by the way. No one does that. You don't have to just be, you know, if you're a person of faith and you pray, then you probably have more thinking time than a lot of people who don't slow down to do that. But whether you're a person of faith or not, I do encourage business thinking. So a couple of hours, you know, 20 minutes of that should be literally sitting silently, thinking about the research that you've done in your hyper tailoring for Jen, or, you know, what did I say? Like Jill and Jim's accounting firm or whatever. I don't know what I said. Yeah, whatever it was. Yeah. And so give yourself 20 minutes to think about, put yourself in their shoes, right? And then develop your content. But try two. I mean, one or two. Try two, I would say. Because you're right. Beastmode just said, don't boil the ocean, essentially is what he said. And don't do this with everybody, because you're not going to be able to. I mean, if you have a staff that can go do this, God bless you. But no one does. But maybe somebody does. But you can handle two. You could try this with two, and then hyper tailor. And then when you reach out with that message, it sounds like you work there, and it sounds like you care.
Yeah, quite frankly, if that could be out of the question for somebody, and I'm being real. So what you can do is you can take a current customer and you need to upsell them. Well, upsell them with the hyper tailoring potential. Too. Start there. Smart, I already got you as a customer, but you know what? I'm going to reach into your pocket a little bit more, and I'm going to tell you where and why.
Wow, that's a great idea. That's a genius idea. That might be, for some people, that might be, you know, like the crawling and the walking stage, because you already have them as a customer. You're just going to add value. If they don't want to buy that extra thing, at least you brought them a lot of value. So Beastmode is to be commended. Great strategy of helping our listeners kind of like crawl and walk before they run. That's smart.
So finally, I know we're running
we're out of time. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the last section we want to talk about is a little bit about message delivery. This will be pretty heavy on Beastmode versus me, but it's about storytelling, and we want to talk a little bit about video within that. We probably should do a whole podcast on storytelling. So I think this will be more of the video side of that, and how people can use video in storytelling. Maybe, I know you have to anonymize the name, but maybe you can share a little bit about your your business development idea for one particular company and what your thought was.
Yeah. So I have a client, and I just really had a strong feeling that they needed to, because they're in a very vague industry, lots of players, and it's not too hard to get into the industry. But then what happens is, to set them apart, what is it that sets them apart? And my idea for them is for them to walk future customers through the story of somebody who's already gone through the process. Why did this customer choose us? And tell that story. This was their pain. This is how we sought to overcome it. And this is where we are now. And you're doing it through video. And a lot of times you're the one telling the story, which again, it helps that personal brand, business brand grow. It allows your customers to see not just your brand or your business, but see there's a person behind this business and they care about me. And they see my problem and they're walking through how their solution meets my needs. And it's really powerful. And you'll never know how many people have similar issues, but you'll never know how many people just see the personal touch you're willing to take and say, you know what, your company's a little smaller, or your budget is a little bit more than what I want to spend. But you know what, that personal touch that you showed, I'll sign up for that. So, you're muted.
Oops, sorry about that. So we'll wrap it up, but yeah, I really love that video approach. I want to do an episode on storytelling. It's going to be a very fun episode. It might be the next one. Beastmode and I will have to do a planning session, think about it. But I think you guys deserve to hear about storytelling in sales and marketing and business development. And it would be fun for us to do, whether it's next week or sometime in the near future. But yeah, thanks a lot, Beastmode, for that great example of how to use video in storytelling. And yeah, I enjoyed rapping with you as always. Where can they find us?
You can actually find us anywhere you literally look for podcasts. They're on YouTube, on all social medias. We're everywhere. Again, we would love to continue this conversation with you personally to see how we can share insights with you. So feel free to comment and subscribe to our channels, and we'll definitely be in touch with you because we see and look at each and every one of those. So until next week, Howie, we'll see you later.
Okay.
All right.